We now go to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly, who was here at the start.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm certainly not going to compare anybody to the Lord and their ability to walk on water, but Secretary Crancer, as you know, I'm from Pennsylvania, and you are too, and I've been in your presence before. Pennsylvania has done an awful lot as far as the natural gas exploration. You just walk us through a little bit the opportunities. As I know, right now, Pennsylvania is called the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. We're talking about at least 2 centuries of supply. We're talking about coal, 2 centuries of supply of coal, and we're talking about also our ability to sever our reliance on imported energy. And I wonder about fossils that are so greatly abundant, accessible, and affordable, and why, when you look at the current administration's record, as much as we'd like to say that there's a lot more being found, a lot more being produced, a lot of that's coming from the private sector. People who have their own skin in the game and are actually taking that step forward. If you could, tell us a little bit what Pennsylvania's done, and I'm trying to understand why anybody inside this beltway would think that they're more concerned about air and water in Pennsylvania than you are.
Well, thank you for that. You're exactly right, and I mentioned that early on. My job is to protect the environment. That's what we do, and that's what my agency does. And your question is a good one, and let me follow up to what the Chairman said. Chairman Issa, he said that our natural gas production in Pennsylvania and elsewhere could provide the key to unlocking the cartels, the oil cartels. It's much broader than that. Right in our state now, we are seeing a renaissance, and it was spoken about earlier in the testimony, of petrochemical industry in America, right here in Pennsylvania. For the first time in my lifetime, maybe in all of your lifetimes as well, the United States of America could potentially enjoy a cost advantage over overseas in petrochemical, ethane to ethylene. We're seeing what's happened right now with respect to Shell and possibly Shell, and I mean possibly because we are only in the first inning of that situation, building a cracker facility in Beaver County. We are seeing the same thing in southeastern PA, which is my backyard. We're seeing the potential petrochemical renaissance in one of our oil refineries that had been shut down. We're seeing the Bakken crude, for example, providing the economic turnaround for another one of our oil refineries in the southeast. So the potential here is gargantuan, and on my side of the ledger, and I can talk about the economics all day because I have an economics degree. I'm an amateur compared to Mr. Perry, but I do know economics. The clean air potential, which I discussed earlier, in cities like mine, Philadelphia, cities like the Governor's, Pittsburgh, and when you have clean air, you have healthier people, you have more business opportunities, and so forth. So the immense possibility for economic revival, environmental cleanup, environmental improvement, and health improvement, they're all there, and they're all there right under our footprints in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Oklahoma, and in many other states.
If you could, what advice would you give Federal regulators right now? Because when I'm back home in northwest Pennsylvania, I get a chance to talk to all these folks that are involved in this industry. They tell me how difficult it is to navigate the permitting process, and that the length of time that it takes to get these online. If you could, what kind of advice could we give the Feds?
Well, my prime advice would be to back off, because the states, including mine, including Oklahoma, including West Virginia, including Texas, Louisiana, you name it, and I don't mean to leave anybody out, are doing a good job regulating hydraulic fracturing, I'll point to that, in their states where it takes place. The Federal Government, all of a sudden, out of the blue, despite the history, and I can go through the legal history about this, all of a sudden is showing an interest in hydraulic fracturing and regulating hydraulic fracturing. Never before had the Federal Government, at any level, regardless of the administration, shown any such interest in doing so. And I would also encourage the other branches of the Federal Government. It's not just about the EPA. The Army Corps, for example, with respect to developing infrastructure, is overstepping its review of projects and treating projects today differently, pipelines, than they ever had in the past. So my advice would be trust the states. The states in which this is happening know exactly what they're doing. They've been at it for generations, and we're on top of it.
And the length of the permitting is the thing that bothers me, because with the exception of something that the Federal Government would do, time is of the essence for those in the private sector. And it's the waiting and the not knowing and the uncertainty if you're even going to get your permit, and to think that you can keep crews on the sideline, you can keep equipment on the sideline, and just keep it warm until they're ready to get in the game once they get a permit. It's absolutely stifling these folks. It's causing them great losses of income, and it's also keeping this country from reaching the energy independence that we've been seeking since the early 70s. Length of time, just real quick, what's the length of time do you think for permitting? A guy that's going to do a coal?
It varies, but let me just say this to sum it up. What I see is Federal overlay, which is adding no environmental protection on the ground, which is causing delay. And, you just look at the Environmental Protection Agency, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. They've got an unbelievable fast track on regulations. They produce more regulations in air, in NAAQS, in 3.5 years than I think the total of 16 years of prior two administrations. When you get to permitting, that's the snail track.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent the gentleman have an additional minute. Without objection, would the gentleman yield?
Yeah, I mean, because I think the critical aspect of this is what we're not seeing. And I was, earlier in the spring, we were talking about there was no relationship between supply and demand, that no matter what, there was no way we could control the price of gas because it was just going to go off the chart because of all these people that gamed the situation. But it's a basic economic belief that supply and demand are the drivers of the cost of energy.
I agree with the gentleman. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes.